What if I told you that the way you speak, how you carry your truth in your voice, has the power to rewrite how she sees you? Not with grand gestures or rehearsed lines, but with something much more powerful: authenticity. Because in a world full of noise and games, real words spoken from a place of clarity and strength hit differently. They reshape the energy in a room. They shift the way you're looked at, talked to, and loved. But most men never realize this, not until it's too late. You've felt it, haven't you? That quiet fading of connection. You were once everything to her, and now it feels like you're on the outside, looking in, wondering how something so alive could slowly bleed out without anyone noticing. That's the part no one tells you about love. It doesn't always explode. It erodes. Not because you didn't care, not because you weren't enough, but because you stopped being real. Somewhere along the way, you started hiding parts of yourself, your pain, your confusion, your frustration. And those pieces, when buried, don't disappear. They rot, and she can feel it. There's a type of honesty that most people never reach. It's not about confessing your love or admitting when you're wrong. It's the honesty that strips you bare. The kind that reveals the wounds you've tried to forget, the truths you've been too afraid to say. And without that level of truth, the relationship starts to crack. Tiny fractures at first, then the whole foundation buckles under the weight of silence. Because even if you smile, even if you pretend everything's fine, she knows. She feels the gap. And that gap becomes distrust. And distrust, it kills everything. You can't build something real while wearing a mask. You can't be loved for who you truly are if you never show who that is. So many men try to be what they think she wants. They filter their words, they bury their anger, they avoid confrontation because they believe peace means silence. But silence is a slow death. Every time you hide how you feel, every time you avoid the hard conversation, you dig a deeper grave for the relationship. Now imagine the opposite. Picture yourself in a moment of complete vulnerability. No defenses, no masks, just truth. You look into her eyes and you say what's been sitting heavy on your chest. And in that moment, maybe it's not easy. Maybe it shakes you, but it also frees you. That's the kind of honesty that clears the air, that redefines intimacy. Because you're no longer performing. You're standing there as you are, flaws and all, and saying, "This is me. This is real." And that kind of truth demands respect. There is a raw power in a man who knows who he is, who speaks without playing games, who chooses truth over comfort. It's not about being right. It's about being real. And that honesty, as painful as it may be in the moment, lays the foundation for a relationship that can weather anything. Because what's built on truth will always outlast what's built on pretending. So when you're tempted to hold back, when you feel yourself drifting into silence again, ask yourself, who am I becoming? A man afraid of his own truth, or one who chooses courage even when it hurts? Because that choice, that's what defines everything that follows. Most people don't lose love because it wasn't meant to be. They lose it because they weren't brave enough to show up fully. They avoided the mirror. They ran from conflict. They hoped the issues would dissolve on their own. But issues don't dissolve, they fester. And over time, what once was love becomes resentment dressed as routine. Conflict isn't the enemy, avoidance is. Every conversation you avoid becomes another crack in the bond. Every truth you bury becomes a wall between you. But when you lean into the tension, when you walk straight into the storm, you find clarity. You find a new kind of closeness, one not born from comfort, but from mutual growth. Growth is messy. It's uncomfortable. It forces you to confront everything you've been running from. But that's what real love asks for. Two people willing to get uncomfortable. Two people choosing honesty even when it shakes the ground beneath them. Two people not hiding from each other, but meeting each other again and again in the truth. Because in the end, love doesn't die from lack of feelings. It dies from lack of truth. And if you're not growing together, you're drifting apart. Every day you choose comfort over growth, silence over honesty, you're quietly signing the death certificate of your connection. So ask yourself, are you willing to be uncomfortable for something real? Are you brave enough to tell the truth, even when it hurts? because that's the only kind of love that doesn't fade. That's the only kind of love that survives. So I ask you again, not with judgment, but with sincerity, are you willing to step up? Are you ready to peel back the layers and face what's really going on beneath the surface? Or will you continue to pretend, hoping things will magically fix themselves while the very thing you claim to care about slowly withers away? Love, real love, isn't something that just exists on its own. It's not some magical force that grows without attention. It demands truth. It demands action. Because love is not just something you feel. It's something you do every single day. And here's the raw truth. No matter how much you care for someone, you can't carry them through their growth. You can't love them into healing. You either rise together or fall apart trying to drag someone who doesn't want to move. And that takes honesty from both of you. It takes the courage to say what's real, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it shakes the ground beneath your feet. Because love without truth is just a pretty illusion waiting to shatter. The way you show up in your relationship is a direct reflection of how you show up for yourself. If you're lying to them, avoiding the tough talks, constantly compromising your own peace just to keep things calm, you're not in a relationship, you're in denial. Love isn't about giving up your boundaries to make someone else comfortable. It's about standing side by side, encouraging each other to grow, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Too many relationships crumble not because of the big betrayals, but because of the quiet ones, the avoided conversations, the unspoken truths, the little resentments that stack up like bricks until you're both living behind walls. Most people want the benefits of connection, intimacy, and trust, but they don't want to do the internal work it takes to maintain them. They want to be loved unconditionally while offering only fragments of themselves. That's not love. That's escapism. Every healthy relationship is built on accountability, on the ability to look in the mirror and say, this is my part in it. Without that, you're just coexisting, just going through the motions. Relationships aren't self-sustaining. They require care. And when they're neglected, they don't just pause, they decay, slowly, quietly. Until one day you wake up next to a stranger and wonder how you got there. And you know exactly when it started. That first time you swallowed your truth to keep the peace. That time you said, it's fine when it wasn't. That time you felt something shift but chose silence over honesty. It's always subtle at first, but it builds. And before you know it, you're in a cycle of avoidance, pretending everything's okay while everything inside you is screaming that it's not. So let me ask you something. How many of you are clinging to relationships that should have ended long ago? How many are caught in cycles of manipulation, fear, and guilt, convincing yourselves that love means staying quiet, that love means losing yourself? That's not noble. That's not romantic. That's self-destruction. But there's a way through it. And it's not through blame or bitterness. It's through honesty, raw, unfiltered truth. You want to save your relationship? Start there. Speak what's been buried. Say what hurts. Share what you've been scared to admit. Because when two people show up with open hearts and accountability, that's where transformation begins. Not every relationship survives this process. But the ones that do, they become stronger than ever because they're built on something real, not fantasy, not illusion, not comfort, but truth, effort, and mutual growth. So I'll ask again, are you willing to face yourself? Are you willing to own your part in what's been lost and what could still be built? Because love without responsibility is a lie, and a relationship without growth is just a slow death in disguise. Stop waiting for perfect timing or a sign from the universe. Stop pretending that love will fix itself. It won't. You have to fix it. You have to water it, tend to it, pull out the weeds, and plant seeds of truth, respect, and discipline. Not just once, but daily. Because if you've ever seen a relationship lose its spark, you know how it begins. Not with a fight, not with betrayal, but with neglect, with silence. With two people who stopped trying and started coasting. And that silence becomes a poison, a slow erosion of what once felt unbreakable. Every time you avoided speaking your mind, every time you let a wound fester without addressing it, you traded short-term comfort for long-term damage. You chose safety over authenticity, and love cannot survive in that kind of environment. It needs truth, it needs friction, It needs people willing to break their own patterns in service of something greater. This isn't about perfection. It's about effort. Growth is messy. It doesn't always feel good, but it's necessary because if you're not growing together, you're growing apart. It's that simple. So if you want to be loved deeply, show up deeply. If you want to be treated like a king, then lead like one. Lead with character. Lead with vulnerability. Lead with truth. You don't fix relationships by waiting. You fix them by showing up again and again with the willingness to do what's hard. If you're not ready to face what it truly takes to build something lasting, then maybe you're not ready for love at all. And if that's the case, you need to ask yourself, what are you really doing here? You don't stumble into something real. You fight for it. That's what makes it powerful, what gives it weight. The moment you stop owning your actions, when your promises become loose threads instead of anchors, things begin to fall apart. It's subtle at first, an off comment here, a missed call there, but eventually it crashes. And when it does, you're left holding nothing but the pieces of what used to be. You'll want to point fingers, maybe even believe your own excuses, but somewhere inside you'll know it wasn't them, it was you. The silence you chose, the honesty you avoided, the responsibilities you pushed away. That's what caused the collapse. It's easy to pretend that holding your feelings back is a form of strength, that avoiding tough conversations makes life smoother. But all it really does is drain the life out of your connection. Silence doesn't shield you. It shatters intimacy, little by little. You may think you're protecting yourself, but what you're really doing is isolating both of you. And that disconnection? It feels like betrayal, not the loud kind, but the kind that leaves no bruises and still breaks everything. What heals it? What saves anything real? Brutal, vulnerable, heart-exposing honesty, the kind that strips away pride and ego and leaves only truth standing. You admit when you're wrong, you say what you're afraid to say, you stop pretending and start showing up. That kind of truth, it's not just brave, it's liberating. It breaks down the wall you've built and lets them see you, the real you. And in that space, connection begins again. But here's the part people don't like to hear. It's going to cost you something. It'll demand courage, responsibility, real presence. You want her to treat you like a king? Then carry yourself like one. Not with entitlement, but with intention. A king doesn't retreat from hard choices. He doesn't disappear when things get messy. He leads, he listens, he learns. Not because it's easy, but because it's what the role requires. Respect isn't something you demand, it's something you earn. By showing up when it's inconvenient, by leaning into discomfort, by being the kind of man whose actions match his words. Love isn't a transaction, it's a mirror. It reflects what you put into it. Most people only look for what they can take from a relationship. But the real ones, they give, they sacrifice, they offer up the messy parts of themselves in the hope that it creates something lasting. And that's what makes it worth it. That's what turns love into something sacred. But you have to ask yourself, are you ready for that kind of weight? Are you ready to be not just the version of yourself that you want to be, but the version that's needed? Because if you're not, if you keep pretending that being emotionally unavailable is strength, then the truth is, you're not hurting just her. You're betraying yourself. You can't build anything solid on a foundation of half-truths and avoidance. You can only build when you take full ownership of who you are and who you're becoming. Pretending you've got it all together only delays the collapse. It doesn't stop it. You can stack up distractions, fake confidence, denial, but it all eventually caves in. Accountability isn't a punishment. It's freedom. It's what separates a real relationship from a performance. If you're not growing, if you're not pushing yourself to become better, not just for her, but for you, then what are you even doing? Standing still in love is the same as walking backward. The hardest truths are the ones you avoid when you look in the mirror. That you haven't changed, that you haven't tried, that somewhere along the line you started settling for average. That's the real danger, not the conflict, not the arguments, but the quiet decision to stop striving. Complacency is the death of passion, and once it sets in, everything else begins to die too. The connection, the respect, the desire, all of it fades when you stop believing that more is possible. Good enough is where most relationships go to rot. If you're not trying to raise the standard for yourself, for both of you, then you're slowly erasing the very thing you said you'd protect. Real love doesn't need perfection. It needs presence. It needs effort. It needs you to show up fully, even when you're afraid, even when you're tired, even when it hurts. You don't get to claim love and hide from the work it demands. Look at yourself honestly. Are you becoming the person you said you would be? Are you giving your best self or just the most convenient version? Because the price of ignoring that answer is steep. You'll lose more than just a relationship. You'll lose the opportunity to become who you were meant to be. But if you fight for it, if you dig deep, commit to the uncomfortable path of growth, vulnerability, and truth, then what you build will be unshakable. And that kind of love, that kind of self-respect, that's worth every battle.